or Messenger if there's something you want to talk. Hey, hello, my Facebook friends. It's Jase with Speakeasy with Jase. It's been a while since we have done a Speakeasy with Jase. And the reason, frankly, I did this again is because I found out a way you could do one of the most important things when you speak, super easy and a super easy way to improve. So let me tee this up a little bit. When we are speaking from stage, when we take the stage, I should actually say this. Do you guys want more sales? Do you guys want or an audience that's wrapped? Do you want an audience that tunes into your presentation, an audience who relates to you as an expert in something to say, which then turns into you making way more sales? So the reason I'm bringing all that up is I found out a way that we can fast track this. When you hit the stage, the audience has 4 questions. Who is this person? Like, should I listen to them? Why are they qualified to be here? Do I like them? Do they like me? And does this information matter to me? So the who is this person is authority. We have 5 goals when we hit the stage: rapport, interest, authority, train, and inspire. If you don't establish authority and influence on stage, you're kind of done. If you do, however, people will buy and they'll listen to you, and it gives you the time to really get them hooked into your information, into your content. So establishing authority is one of the most critical things you could do. And I found someone who is so good at creating influence and impact. I'm like super excited to share with you this person. He has spoken with millions of people. He's interviewed, I can't even name how many people. Zig Ziglar, Marianne Williamson, James Redfield, like huge names. He's working on a documentary with James Redfield, who is the author of The Celestine Prophecy, which was one of the first personal growth books I ever read. If you've heard of TEDx, he is a multiple TEDx speaker. He's spoken at Harvard, spoken at Microsoft multiple times. He's the founder of Blue Talks. He is amazing. He's been in the Wall Street Journal, USA Today bestseller, just so cool. And he's really touched millions of lives. It is so awesome. He's in Forbes as well. So without talking more about him, let's talk to him. Please welcome to the stage, my friend, Corey. Corey, come on up. Let me add you to. Hey, Corey.
Hey, Jase. How's it going?
Good. Thanks for joining us today. So you are up to some super cool stuff right now. Fill me in what is going on that we are so excited about. And what you were just talking about banners, I really want to help people get to a place where they can make a lot more sales speaking. That's our real gift. You know, we don't train as much keynote speakers. We're really training people to be experts on selling from stage. So I want to see how you can help my tribe today.
Yeah, so, there's so many directions we could go, of course. I feel like maybe the best place to start, you mentioned the word banner, so maybe we'll start there. One of the things that I should give some context here as well. I've been a paid speaker for 20 years, both selling from the stage, but also a paid speaker as well. And, building that business from, I was early 20s. And so one of the things that I wish I would have known sooner, because anything I'm doing, Jase, I try to test the conversion, like how well it's converting. And so, not to jump to a different area, but like TEDx, for instance, converted about 15%, my TEDx video, my first one, 15% higher than my $5,000 sizzle reel. So, I tested those things because I'm like, whoa, okay, well, I need to obviously start using the TEDx more, but I also wanted to know why it was converting better. That's a whole nother rabbit hole. But the point is that I've tested this stuff. And one of the other areas that I've tested that it's amazing to me, most people don't do, it's low-hanging fruit, and yet it has a really high return. And as you know, you don't hear that often. Low-hanging fruit, and most people aren't doing it. And it's high return. So is the thing I call the as seen on banner. It's the best, to me, it's the best name I can give to it. If people haven't heard of it or don't know what I'm talking about, think about when you go to a website of insert name here. You've named some of the names. So Marianne Williamson, Jack Canfield, T.R. Becker. Go to those websites. I bet you almost to a T. I bet you 85 to 95% of them for sure have an as seen on banner. And it might be a banner, or it might just say as seen on and list the own network, Ellen, et cetera, et cetera. This thing here, I've discovered when I've interviewed people, they said that they saw that person as more of an authority within seconds of seeing that banner. So when people go and they're thinking, should I hire this speaker? Let's say, should I bring on our stage? Can we trust this person to speak at our event? Even if they're selling from the stage, can we trust them? and they see that banner, it makes them have a little bit more comfort because they feel somebody's vetted them. Like if they have 10 logos on the banner, 10 places have vetted them. So what is it really in theory? I mean, it's just basically a banner that says where you've been featured. Now, when I ask people, Jase, why they don't do it, a lot of people say, well, I haven't been on Outlet. I haven't been in Forbes. Well, wait a minute. I never read a rule book that says that's what has to be on your banner. Wouldn't it be better to have a banner, even with logos that people aren't familiar with, that still tells them you've been featured in the media than not at all? So here's where the hack comes in. There's a website, and there's multiple websites that you can do this with. This just happens to be the one I know quite well, called radioguestlist.com. Completely free. And you go to radioguestlist.com. On the right-hand side, I think it is, you sign up for their free newsletter. The next day and every day going forward, you're going to get emails from Radio Guest List listing podcasters looking to interview people just like you. And so if you, let's say there's 5 a day that they're looking for, 5 people are looking for guests. What I'm going to suggest, if you're starting from scratch, you haven't even done an interview, but you want an as seen on banner, then apply for those 5. So every day, apply for those 5. Even if you're just brand new, these are people that took the time to type out an ad saying we're looking for people. You're probably going to get 1 out of 5. So let's say you did this for 10 business days. That means at the end of 2 weeks, let's say you got 1 out of 5. That means you have 10 interviews you now can do. The following 2 weeks or week and a half, podcasters traditionally pre-recorded, so they'll do the interview quicker than others. So let's say you can do those 10 interviews in a week and a half to 2 weeks. You've done the interviews. Now, not only do you have the interviews that you can leverage, and if you want to speak on more stages, then you definitely want to talk about that during your interviews. Like you can use this as the thing you send to people when they're considering hiring you as well. But not only that, you now can get 10 logos. So now all of a sudden you have 10 logos. And if you want to do it for free, if you can design, I'm not a design guy, you can design, it's all free, you're done. You just design a banner, put it on your website. If you can't design, you can go to Upwork or 99 Design or Fiverr or one of these freelance sites and pay $20 and have your banner. So whether it's free or $20, in 3 weeks, you can go from not having a banner at all and never having done an interview to actually having a banner with 10 logos on your website. And to me, that's the kind of stuff that helps the closing ratio. It helps people decide quicker with you. Again, just think about it. If you went to 2 websites and one says they've been as seen on 10 shows and the other one didn't, and everything else is equal, and you're a planner of an event, who are you going to hire? I mean, I know which one I'm hire.
So that was radioguestlist.com, right? Radio Guest List. So let's talk a bit about that influence, because I'd love to get your opinion on this. A lot of people get into publishing their own book, or they have someone publish it for them, and they think they're going to sell copies of the book and make money. And I'm always like, no. Like, I have a client right now. She's going to be doing her 3-day event this weekend, and she's selling it. I don't want to give the price in case someone watching will be there, but it's worth $50-something thousand bucks. The total value, actually, total value is worth $70,000. She'll sell it, in the good range that people are selling for. She was going to offer her books there, and I'm like, no, because if someone could buy a $20 book, that will sabotage your $20,000 sale. So the reason I say that is I have no intentions of ever selling any of my books when I produce a book. Why does a book help? Period. Why does As Seen on TV help? Period. Like, really unpack it. Like, I have my opinion. I want to hear how you answer this. Like, why do people need to get that? I call it positioning or authority. Why do they need to have that?
I feel there's a whole bunch of, I would say a whole bunch, but there's multiple answers to this in the sense that, one, it's going to get them, it's going to open more doors. So in other words, somebody that's thinking of partnering with them is going to be more likely to do it. Somebody's thinking about hiring you, as I mentioned, all of a sudden, it just gets them a little bit more trust. This person's been vetted by people. It also gets people a taste for who you are. So you're talking the book. Even if you're not intending to sell it to people, you might hand it out when you're on the plane to somebody, and you don't realize that's going to trail back to a company that has 50,000 employees that brings you in to speak. And so I would say it's twofold. It's one, the visibility you get and the doors that'll open for more visibility. And then the secondary side is that it's going to increase your closing ratio because it just adds those more elements. Like when you heard my bio, if somebody goes, okay, can we trust to bring Corey in? Okay, well, he's a multiple-time TEDx speaker. He's written Wall Street Journal, USA Today bestseller. They start going down those lists. All of a sudden, they're like, okay, well, first of all, chances are he's been vet by other people. But secondly, he's not going to leave us in the lurch. And we can also use those things to promote him at our event.
Yes.
There's people that have hired me because I'm a multiple-time TEDx speaker because they want to say we have a multiple-time TEDx speaker at the event. And so it's both sides. It's what it does for your credibility and then visibility. And the visibility, you still have to do the work and kick in those doors. But let's be honest, Jase, if somebody hears your, again, Wall Street USA Today or multiple time TEDx speaker, and you're pitching them to be on their podcast, you've just increased your odds by probably 25 or 30%, because they know they can list that when at the start of the show, and that helps them establish credibility on their show.
So I want to ask you about some things on your bio, because you're reading your bio. I was just like, and normally I wouldn't. I almost never want to read someone's bio when it's like almost a full page. I should just screen share it with you guys. It's unbelievable what he has on his bio. It's like single spaced, a full page of amazingness. So I'm not going to read it all, but I was like so impressed. So before we go there, I want to share a quick story about when I got a book made. So I was, this woman was setting up an event, and we were talking about if we could sell from stage or not. And she was going to maybe have some people sell from stage, but no one was really getting paid. And then I remembered I had a book coming out. And oh yeah, I have a book coming out. And she goes, oh my gosh, you do? She wound up paying me to speak there, paid my travel, and I could sell my stuff from stage on a 50-50 split. And it wasn't, she didn't have the book in her hand, guys. It's that I had a book, period. And the way I always think about it is, just because you bet on the radio, TV doesn't make you an expert, except in the audience's mind it does. So you guys, when you're thinking about speaking, when you're thinking about closing, put yourself in the mindset of your prospect. And if you've got Bob, who's never been published in anything, and everything else is considered equal, Bob's pretty good. Or they look at Jane's website, and Jane has been on TV and radio and podcasts. Who do you think is going to be the better one? Jane, and Jane's going to make a lot more money. So let's talk about you. How have you gotten so much visibility? How did you start? How did you get to where you are? And how have you done so much amazing stuff? And I want to know your tactics. And Corey, this is kind of, I didn't tell you I was going to ask you this. I'd like to know a little bit about your mindset too, because we think you got to have the right scripting, you got to have great delivery, but it's your mindset that really carries the show as a speaker. I'd love to hear a little bit about your mindset and then some of the things you've done to get so much exposure. Like, for instance, guys, he's a multiple-time TEDx speaker. That's a really big deal. So I'll let you take that away, Corey.
Well, yeah, I'm happy to do that. And I do want to just add one quick second on what you said a minute ago, too, excuse me, about the person may not come across as an expert on TV, but if they read that, they believe you are. Interestingly enough, what I find funny is I mentioned Jack Canfield, and I think Jax has like Super Soul Sunday, Ellen, like really big names. My question to you watching right now, have you seen any of the episodes that Jack's on? Have you seen him on Super Soul Sunday twice? And the chances are most people here haven't, but yet I bet you if they go to his website and see Ellen, Super Soul Sunday, they go, this guy's the real deal. So again,
That's
to your point.
Hysterical.
Well, people, like, to the point, most people that you're going to share 2 years from now, you were in Good Morning America, didn't see that episode, but you still get the credibility years later. So it's an evergreen thing, really, once you're on a powerful show, or any show, really, if you know how to leverage it. So I just wanted to add that, because that's a good segue into your question. A lot of this stuff that I've done is basically come down to leverage. And so I'm doing I told you about this, but I'm doing a masterclass next weekend. It's called Activating the Domino Effect. And I view it kind of like dominoes. What I did early on is I strategically said, what's the domino I need to knock down 4 or 5 dominoes?
Well,
that's everything. So in other words, I'll give you a real-time story. One of the early things that I did, which was I had a podcast starting, I think it's 2012 we started our podcast. First one ever was starting. That's almost 10 years ago. So that's pretty early in podcasting. It was actually online radio at the time. And I said, I need to get some big names on the show. But I didn't have any listeners, Jase. Like, as you know, it's not easy to go to a big name and they say, how many listeners do you have? And you say 0. I haven't started the show yet. So I was like, this is not a good start. But I said, okay, I'm going to pick a name of 100 people. And I didn't reach out to all 100, but I just said, I'm going to pick a name of 100 and I'm going to start and keep going. One of the first ones I picked was Jack Canfield, who I mentioned earlier, Chicken Soup with a Soul co-creator. At the time, I went into Jack's office, and I can go into more detail than this, but basically I reached out to Jack's team and they said he says no 9 out of every 10 right now, Corey, because he's not really doing much and he's on more of a break. So it's probably going to be a no. So that's how it started. So this goes into mindset as well, I think. But that's how it started. It's probably going to be a no. And so every month for the next 4 months, I reached out and they said, Corey, nothing's changed. We'll get back to you if something does. So what happened was, here's what changed. Around 3.5 months in, I heard an interview with a guy named Dan Sullivan, who runs Strategic Coach. He was being interviewed by Darren Hardy from Success Magazine. At the time, it was like the CDs. If people know what CDs are, I was listening to a Success Magazine CD, Darren interviewing Dan Sullivan. Dan said, this is one of my favorite interviews I've ever done. And Dan also said, Darren asked him about an event. He said, yeah, we have people like Jack Canfield, Mark Victor Hansen, Joe Polish. And he noted that he coaches them. I'm like, in my head, right away, I went, boom. If I can get Jack Canfield's coach on my show, I can probably get Jack on the show. So I reached Dan's office. And I want to also add, Dan was a good catch too. He didn't do a lot of interviews. But I knew that he already loved the Success Magazine style. And we sent him some clips of mine to show we were a similar style. So he's like, this is the kind of show I want to be on. So they said yes, brought him on. I brought up Jack twice. Dan said, you know, Corey, Jack would love the show. You should bring him on. I took that clip. I sent it to Jack's office. I said, even Dan, Jack's coach, thinks Jack should be on my show. The next morning, they came back and said, you've beaten us at a submission. Here's his link to schedule it. And to finish the story off, which is kind of cool, the day before we aired on Saturdays then, the day before he was on Larry King Live, the day after he was on Super Soul Sunday, and in between he was on our show. That's awesome. Domino. Jack was the domino, because then what I could do, Jase, is I could go, now I have Dan and Jack, I can go to Mark Victor Hansen, you know, Jack's writing partner, Dan's client, and say, hey, Mark, we've had Jack and Dan on the show. I think he'd be a good fit. And all of a sudden he's going, well, these are two people that I trust. Maybe I'll do it. And if you see where I'm getting at, that's the leverage side, because then I would just use that. And then at some point, when you're going to apply to do a TEDx talk, if your talk's going to be on the timeless secrets I've learned from influential leaders, and you can list off hundreds of people you've interviewed, you know, that leveraging those names now for your TEDx talk. And so it's always about leveraging the one thing to get to the next thing.
I absolutely love that. That's so smart. You guys, it's kind of like sales. Once you get one sale, more sales come. Once the action happens, more happen. So Corey, can I tell you, can I make a confession to you about a time I totally blew it with PR and publicity and influence and all that? So I was on did you ever hear the show The Daily Buzz?
Yes.
So I'm a big believer that once in a lifetime opportunities come around once when you miss them, but when you take advantage of them, you get more. Like one of our things we teach is called the one stage crush it. If you crush it on one stage, you can make your entire business, because out of one stage can come a ton of sales. And then more importantly, more stages could come out of that. And then out of both, you have people coming to your event where you get super high profit. So literally I spoke on one stage, rocked it. I was on that stage for 7 more years, and it opened up in just the first year, 14 more stages. So yeah, I made well over $500,000 from that one speech if you count it all up. Anyway, my point in all this, when you don't take advantage of great opportunities, they're gone. They're gone forever. And when you take advantage, you get more. So long story short, I'm on the Daily Buzz. And I still do hypnosis here and there. I'm a comedy hypnotist. And I was on, this was like probably 2004. And I hypnotized the host throughout the morning. And they wound up having me stay all morning and come on like 3 or 4 times on the show. I talked a little bit, hypnotized the host, had him do this goofy stuff. And at the end of the day, the executive producer comes over and says, hey, you're pretty good on camera. Would you be interested in a segment where you open viewer mail every week? I was like, yeah. And I never did anything with it. You guys, wow. The Daily Buzz is nationwide. And weird enough, no executive producers called me up since then going, will you please? I blew that. I mean, I got to get over it, but I totally blew that one. And so the reason I bring it up on this call, you guys, now when I have an opportunity to position myself, I take it. I've spoken at Harvard too. I've spoken at Guerrilla Marketing Summit. I've been published in multiple books. And frankly, the books in the beginning were compilation books. I paid to be in them. You know, I did what it took, but the positioning I got out of that has more than paid off. I just wish I had said yes that time. So if you had to start it over, what would you do? Like if you were starting fresh, what's the fastest way for people to gain influence right now? Or what would you do right now today if you were beginning fresh right now?
Well, I don't want to say, obviously, an SC non-banner, but that's one of them that would be up there. But you obviously, again, you have to have the things to put on the banner. And so I feel like what I would start first, I've learned that outside of the accolades that help you, that you can leverage, is the relationships. So the people that you end up working with. And so what I would do if I was starting from scratch, let's say you put me in a new city, never been there before, and everything from scratch. I think what I would do is I'd find the groups that have influencers in them, and I would get there and I would start giving to everybody first. Like, meaning I would start saying, how can I help you? How can I help you? And I think you would get known quickly as the interviewer, expert, the influencer, everything. If you're the person that everybody kind of goes, I know that Corey doesn't do this, but he knows 5 people that does. And he's willing to tell me about the 5 people that does. So, and that's offline or online. So if I was dropped in a place where I had to do everything offline, I would start where are the chamber events, where are all the events, and figure out who I should know. But I wouldn't just go, okay, I'm only going to help people that I know, or sorry, the people that I should know. But I would really be the giver in there. That everybody goes, Corey's the guy that gives everything. And that same thing I would say is same with social media. Drop into Facebook groups and be the person that everybody sees that's giving all the time. I think that's what I would do quickly if I had to start from scratch.
Oh, that's so great. Hey, one of our viewers, they did, you guys, you got to allow StreamYard to say your name, see your name, sort of who it is. But someone said, no, it's okay. It was a lesson for you to learn. So thank you, whoever you are, anonymous Facebook person, for helping console me with not taking advantage of that opportunity. But that's one of the reasons I really want to get Corey on here. And that's one of the reasons I wanted him on, because I don't want us to miss these. I want us to take advantage of these so we can leverage up. Because there's also, Corey, you mentioned your show. There's a secret thing that happens when you have a show, and that's access to people. And what that, can you talk a little bit about what that's done for you? I mean, obviously it's already, you met all those famous people, but could you talk about it in that context of what it's done for you and your positioning and your influence and your access? You guys, when you have a show, it opens, speakers hang out with speakers, it opens a door. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start kind of with the end in mind. I'll start, when you said it, if you're a speaker, speakers hang out with other speakers, I'll go and say, if you have, let's just say it's podcasting. Let's use that example as your show. Podcasters hang out with other podcasters. So first and foremost, you can build quick relationships with show hosts of other shows, which they're influencers at different levels. But if you have a show, you can literally reach out to somebody else, say, hey, and this is a common phrase, hey, you want to do a podcast swap? I mean, think about this. There's people pitching, both of you, me. Let's say if I did that to somebody, there's people pitching me and them. Now I'm probably getting pitched 5 times a day. So there's whatever that works out to a month, so what is that a month? Is that 25, 100 times a month? And yet somebody would reach out to me and say, want to do a podcast swap? And I'll say, sure. So I bypass those 100 people that don't have a podcast, or at least didn't tell me they do, to bring on another podcaster, because I know we're going to help each other. We both get the industry. It's like, it's 2 school bus drivers hanging out. They know each other better, their industry better than most. So having said that, first of all, it's the benefit of having a show is not only from the perspective, and we can talk about that, of who you can meet and the ways you can meet people and how you can leverage your show. It's also the fact that you can get interviewed more because you have a show. Like, not just other podcasters, but if you want to be interviewed by a radio show, they're still going to look at somebody that has clips of them hosting a podcast differently than somebody that doesn't. So first of all, I would say one of the benefits of having a show is you can leverage it to become the go-to expert before you even get to the point of how you're leveraging the show with listeners. So that's
I love it. They talk about leverage. Like when you meet people, how do I want to put this in a way that sounds right? You guys, if you're a speaker at an event and you're swarmed, quick tip, by the way, for meeting speakers and influential people. If you meet them before they speak, it has such a bigger impression than if you meet them after. I've had people when Corey, off stage, I can be very quiet, honestly, quiet. I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say to me, wow, you're way better than I expected, which is, kind of a mixed compliment, right? And I get it though, because I can dim my energy off stage, but on stage, there's a permission to big. So I've had people like, I want to just talk to them, make a friend before I got on stage, and literally they blew me off. And then after they see me speak, like, oh, it's so nice to meet you. And I'm like, is that really authentic? So if you want to meet influential people, meet them before they go on stage and be cool to them. And if you could encourage them before they go on stage, I'll remember people that are like, you're going to rock it. You're going to knock them out. Like I get so excited. So bring all that up. When you're a speaker, and I hope this lands right for our audience, if you're meeting a ton of people, it can be overwhelming, and then it's hard to really get to know everybody. When you meet the other speakers, there's a whole different level of connection. And so if you have a show, you're meeting people speaker to speaker, and your positioning in that relationship goes from here to an equal. So you're on a level playing field with people, and you're positioned up in the eyes of the other speakers and experts, which then could open the doors to be on their stages or friendship or connection. I mean, we met because we were on each other's shows. it opens doors that otherwise wouldn't be open, and you get to know people on such a level. And then, oh my gosh, what that does for your life. Just before we started the show, some of the tips you were telling me, I was like scribbling down because I'm like, this is awesome stuff. And I have a big launch coming up. And so I'm now learning from you. And I wouldn't have had that kind of behind the scenes talk if we hadn't met through a show. So I'm talking way too long. So that all makes sense.
It does for sure. And, I'll add one of the things that, again, a lot of stuff is about leverage, but it's always important. Everything's got to be authentic. So, I'll give people another thing. It's not really a hint or a tip because it really probably should be something we commonly do. It's just that people don't. But I'll give you another example is that whenever I'm at an event or meeting somebody, I always get photos. Now, to your point, I get it before they speak. I don't go up after they speak when there's a whole big line, especially if I'm speaking at the event. Again, to your point, I'll talk about the show. We should bring you on. So there is that commonality. But there's two things that happen. One, for me, because I do interviews, I figure I'm going to still reach out to them, get an interview. I want to have a picture, and I tell them that sometimes, that we can run with the show. That's a picture of us in real time rather than just separate pictures. But the secondary part is that, again, it has to be done right. It's got to be authentic. But those photos, now it's like one of my websites, it's probably like 200 photos of me with different influencers. And so when people start going and scrolling down there, it's like they get tired of doing it, but they've gained like a wow. This isn't just a guy who's just, riding from event to event saying, can I pay you $500 to get a picture with you? This is a guy who's sitting with them, interviewing them, sitting in Jack Canfield's home, sitting in Les Brown's home. I mean, so they're authentic pictures, but what I'm saying is you can still, as a speaker, build that credibility for your website if you give photos with other speakers. And they're not going to mind. If they're okay with taking the picture, you're helping them. If you have a picture of Stephen R. Covey, was one of my early pictures, Stephen Covey's son. And I mean, so he was on my website early on getting all this exposure because his name's there. But the big thing is, it can't look like you're going up and saying, hey man, can I get a picture? Like, it can't be like you're basically begging for a picture or you're being rude about getting the picture. You authentically have to be able to talk to the person. Like, it can't be just, hey, smile, we're snapping the picture. Like, it should be, you should honestly care about their work. You should know their work. But I'm just saying, always have your phone with you and don't pass that by, because so many people go, oh, I better not ask. And then you meet the people 2 years later and they say, why didn't you get a picture? When I tell them that, why didn't you ask me? I would love that. So I'm just adding that it adds a lot of credibility. If somebody goes to your website and they see 6 or 7 speakers, and by the way, just think of it this way. If you say I've shared the bill with, and I'm just insert names here, Barack Obama, Oprah, and just list names, but you have the 7 of the photos up top. Would you not think that adds more impact to you saying share the bill with them when they see, oh yeah, there's the photos of that? But then they're also getting this is the type of person they're learning from and spending their time with. So to me, Jase, that's another thing, is it's a leverage thing. But I think a lot of people miss that chance because they're like, oh, I better not ask, or they're too nervous. I've been nervous to approach people, but I still went up there, even a little stream of sweat going down, and said, you know what, I still got to do it because I'll never have this chance again, perhaps.
Totally. So, you mentioned a couple things there. By the way, when you're taking a photo, a tip for everyone watching, if you're at an event and you have a lanyard on, take your lanyard off, because the lanyard says you're an attendee who got a photo with the star. Take it off so you look equal footing. And separate, never ask them, never assume they would hold your product. And don't assume that you could just hold it up. You could ask them, hey, can I hold it up? Would that be okay? And they might say yes, or they might say no. It can be a little tacky. Not that many people have product anymore. Better to, unless it's like a real endorsement from them, better to just get a picture with them, because you could be putting them in a very awkward spot. So I wouldn't do it unless you clear it with them ahead of time. So you have, go ahead.
So I didn't mean to interject. I just wanted to comment on, I'm glad you shared that, Jase. I don't want to gloss over that, the idea of taking off the lanyard, because I've done that. I have a few pictures. I'm like, I don't even know if I want to ever use them anymore. And it's because me foolishly, I left the lanyard on. So like one of them, I remember like I crop it up above the lanyard. So it's just like our 2 heads. And like, so your point, 100%. And it hasn't been that many out of all the photos where it's been that I've been attending an event. But the ones that is, again, to your point, it just doesn't look the same. And then the product thing, it's funny you say that, because that's one thing I've never done. Even if I have a book, I've never said, can you hold up my book? Because unless I was with them or there was some reason, it didn't feel authentic to me either. But there are circumstances like John Gray, for instance, Mentor from Mars. We've done multiple interviews and we have him on in a couple of weeks in our influencer vault. But John held up my book, but he wanted to. He's like, can I hold the book? And I didn't say, yes, hold the book. And obviously I'm not going to say, no, you can't. But the other side to it is John endorsed it. So to me, it played plays nicely because I could literally put his endorsement about the book below him holding the book. But yeah, to your point, I mean, I think it's got to be authentic. Like I don't think you should try to manufacture too much of it. And to your point, I think getting them to hold a product and pushing it on them is kind of manufacturing it. And I think we can tell in most photos if they really generally want to hold your product or not. Like if they're holding your book and they're like this, chances are they were handed this book. But yeah, I just want to compliment on those two things or comment on them.
So talking about influential people, you've interviewed a lot of influential people, right? Like you've done a lot of interviews. So a lot of people watching are getting into podcasting, or they're running challenges, or they're running, I'm forgetting the name. We have a bunch of people on over the course of a couple of weeks, summits. Yeah. So do you have any tips on us on really doing that effectively? Any best practices?
So it depends on if the question's about posting it or interviewing it or launching it, because there's a couple of different answers there. So with interviews, if I go that direction, is that what you wanted me to do? Cover a couple of different areas there?
Yeah, I was thinking the interviews. I liked everything else you brought up too, though. So kind of all of it, if you have time.
Yeah. So the interview part, I would say, well, again, all these things you can go down. Like I'm a person that I feel you could go down a rabbit hole for a long time. So I always try to pick high level stuff that somebody could use right away. And so on the interview side, I will say this. One of the things I hear from a lot of people is they say, Corey, it's amazing. You can sit there across from so-and-so and do an interview without any questions. And they're like, well, I could never do that. Or I know, I have to ask questions, so it's wrong. I have to have a list of questions. And again, who wrote these rules that you're talking about? So whenever I first started, that's why I'm bringing this up. When I first started, I had questions. I had like 10 standard questions I asked everybody. Now it was podcasting and online radio, so people couldn't see my questions. But my point is I still had questions. And so you would hear me asking questions, the same ones each time. But here's my basically almost like why I would say it's a myth that you can't ask questions is look at somebody like John Lee Dumas. So John Lee Dumas has Entrepreneurs on Fire. Entrepreneurs on Fire at one point had over 1 million listeners a month. I don't know if it still does, but 1 million listeners for a podcast by a non-celebrity. John asked the same questions every day, I think, for, I want to say 4 or 5 years.
Really?
And so my point is, here's a guy asking questions with a sheet of paper. I don't think he still needs the sheet of paper, but with a sheet of paper type questions, and got to show up to 1 million listeners a month and interviewing people like Tony Robbins, Gene Simmons. So the first point there is it doesn't matter if you have questions or not. That's okay. Larry King, if you remember, sometimes you watch Larry King live and he'd be leaning in and he'd be reading his questions on a cue card and he's reading them with his finger. Again, there's nothing wrong with having questions, but that's something that I find a lot of people think. I see one Facebook user number 2 said it should be a conversation. So yes, I feel like, in my opinion, great interviews, a lot of great interviews, there's different styles, but for me, great interviews are ones where it feels like I'm listening in on a conversation over coffee. And so, yes, I feel if you can, as an interviewer, make it feel like a conversation, that's amazing as well. Next thing I would say is, and this is more communication than even just interviews, but use the person's name every now and then. So the people that I've interviewed that you can just tell are world-class and they've been interviewed thousands of times, they'll ask me beforehand, how do I pronounce your name? And like they're asking me this stuff, but you don't know whenever they get on with me doing the interview, they're like, so Corey, I want to tell you this one thing. And then all of a sudden you feel like we've known each other forever. Now, Mark Victor Hansen, I set him on, and it is true. So it was real. It didn't feel like that. It was real. But Mark said, Corey, I don't know if I think I told you this before, and so think of how that sounds to the listener or viewer. He's saying my name, and I think I told you this before.
That's
I think
awesome.
He did. But even if he didn't, think of how that sounds to the viewer. It feels like these guys know each other like inside out. So I guess I'm saying on both sides, if you're the interviewee or interviewer, use the name. Make it feel like we're sitting over a coffee conversation, as user number 2 said. So that's a big part of the interview. And like I said, don't worry about whether it's questions or not questions. That is going to come down to more your approach. Me, I started out with questions because I just felt I had to. But now the difference is I want it to be a conversation. I go with intuition. So I want to basically intuition where if you say something, I'll give you an example. We could be talking about you being a dog whisperer, and then I ask you a question and you drop on me that you were undercover for 5 years. So am I going to say, well, that's not part of my question. So for me, I need to go in that direction now and tie it to the whole bigger thing. So
Totally.
yeah, so that's what I would say about the interviews is that make it feel like a conversation. Go with, and so I guess the takeaway from what I just said a minute ago is go with what feels right to you. If you're a question person, keep the questions going. Don't worry about it, and it won't be seen as amateurish if you don't act like it is. And on the other side, if you're not a question person and you want to go with intuition like me, go with intuition. I will say though, probably don't try first thing if you don't have improv background, comedy, something. Like I come from 9 years of stand-up comedy. So if you don't come from backgrounds like that, you may not want to.
I was
Yeah.
about to, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I was just thinking about something to bring up. You have I didn't realize that. You had a background in stand-up comedy. You did improv then too?
A little bit of improv, not as much. I did study at the Groundlings School in Hollywood, improv, but
Really?
but 700 comedy shows, like stand-up. So I mean, stand-up was more my thing. So
Dude,
yeah,
I had no clue on that. I teach people you got to be an entertainer. You got to be a closer, an entertainer, and unstoppable if you want to change the world through speaking. I love it.
You know what? It's a good segue though to what we're talking about here, because do you know who Jordan Harbinger is?
I know the name, and he has a podcast, and I don't remember what it is.
So interestingly, the podcast he has now, because you might be thinking of his previous one, is the Jordan Harbinger Show. So it's just his name. The one previous to that was Art of Charm. Between the two shows,
that one. I knew that one.
Yeah, that was his first one. Between those two shows, there's over 200 million downloads. And so the latest one is bigger, actually, the one he started second. Why I bring it up is we had him on recently, like about a week and a half ago, and he said this thing that just the wording he said, I was like, boom. I said, what's the thing that most people make mistakes when they're trying to get on your show? And he said, they bury the lead. And so I'm a classic example. I buried the lead today because I didn't tell you I did stand-up comedy. Because whenever I want to get on a show, if I met like stand-up comedy could be my way to get onto a show that otherwise would say no to me. But I can still tie, obviously, performing stand-up into everything else I do today. So what he gave the example is somebody that pitched him that was like a coach, and here's the 5 things I teach you about pillars of success. His friend said, you didn't book him? I thought you'd love him. And he goes, no, well, I'm not big on bringing on coaches on my show. He goes, oh, he didn't tell you he was also an undercover cop for 5 years? And he goes, no, that's the lead. Why didn't he tell me that? But the other takeaway I would say, if you're pitching somebody, just because you don't think a part of your background is sexy, if you tell it to other people and they lean in to hear more, you need to be sharing that. And by the way, this goes for even getting on stages. You should share it with the meeting planners.
So an example of that for me, and it's so funny, Corey, I laugh because, I've helped people. Like I had someone say they didn't commit suicide because they came to my event. Other people got over their fear and got married. Other people became millionaire. All this cool stuff, travel the world. And then I'll be like, oh yeah, I was a flight attendant for a while. And people are like, you were a flight attendant? It's like the most interesting thing. And I'm like, and before I forget this, so we teach people the importance of improv, because improv makes you better in sales and relationships. And I've done a little training because I bring improv experts into my courses, and I'm telling my students, do improv. And then it hit me recently, I've never actually formally taken an improv course. So I signed up for one, and we had our first class last night, and Sean Hancock's the coach, and Sean's here in Boise, and he was talking about your job is to really actively listen, and you have to work with whatever the person gives you. And so if you're playing a scene and they give you something, like let it land, and if it really stands out, follow that thread. And then the second thing is your job is to make the other person look good. And I think in speaking, even if you're doing transformational events where people are wrecked and you want to get them to the other side, you still need to let people look good, because that gives them the freedom to change and helps release them from shame and misery. And then in speaking and in sales, you want to make the other person look good. You always want to give people a chance to save face. So these tools we're talking about, I can see how it would make you such a better interviewer too. And then how you're saying follow that thread that came up, like the aliveness in this up since I discovered you were that. That's really, thank you. This is super helpful. For me personally, this has been super helpful. Thank you so much. Really great. That's super cool.
So, and like I said, on the interview side, because I mentioned a couple areas, but that would be what I'd say on the interview side. And then just like super duper extra quick, if you're running, because we're running our event called Blue Talks, which you are part of. And so in running that event, one of the things that I've discovered as well is for people that want to run events is communication is everything. So with the speakers that are going to be on your event, with the audience, and also testing everything to make sure it really works. Because if you don't, you're going to get the email saying, I tried to sign up and I can't. And you don't want that happening when you're going live in 5 minutes. Like people, I'm trying to get there. And it does happen. But my point is that, so test things, I guess I'm saying, but then also at the same time, communicate. So let the audience know, here's how you can sign up. If you have any questions, here's how you can reach us. With the speakers or presenters, give them your cell phone and or a way to reach out to you directly right away. So I would say just be organized. And I'm involved in a lot of events that aren't, so I can tell you, you need to be. And I will say, I would never say a name, but I was involved in an affiliate opportunity where somebody was running an event, and I won't say too much because it could give it away, where they're running an event. It was a connection of mine through somebody else. So two guys are running an event. I know one guy, but the other guy is the alpha. He's the one really running the event, and I don't know him. And it was the most disorganized event I've ever been a part of as an affiliate. But the problem with that, Jase, is I brought them about 25 of the 35 presenters. Ooh. So every 5 minutes, I'm getting messages saying, what is this clown show going on? And I'm the one getting hit with it. So it does a couple of things. One, it's embarrassing to me. But secondly, it hurts them because obviously when with my network, I bring a lot of people when I go do something and I'm trusting it. But I trust the non-alpha. And I still think the world of him. And he's like, dude, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I just partnered with him. I didn't realize this was all going to happen. But my point is, running the event, the problem was there was no communication.
Yeah,
and communication is hard. Yeah, and they just didn't follow up. Like, even there was like 25 presenters, and 5 of them were coming, Corey, I'm not even on the website yet, and the event's starting in 5 minutes. Just stuff like that, just disorganized. So I would say where you're running an event, just try to picture, go at the end in mind, right? Stephen Covey said, try to go to the end and say, what do we all have to have done? And then work your way backwards and say, what all has to be done and take steps. And one of the biggest ones is test it. When you're doing a launch, same thing. I mean, I've heard of people doing launches where they never tested the funnel. And then all of a sudden people are like, I couldn't get in, I gave up. So that would be my advice on running events. Is
I know someone who they did their 3-day program, and the registration form, the client couldn't get it to work, and they lost a $15,000 sale. I mean, my event that we just launched out, I put my credit card in, not in test mode, in real mode, and bought a ticket to make sure everything worked. It's worth it. So I want to segue from doing the interview to being interviewed and helping people get these as seen-ons. What's the best way to do this? And I know we don't have much time left, so is what you're about to do going to help with this as well? Because I want to make sure we have time to talk about that as well. How can we get people the most visibility and the most influence and the most leverage as soon as possible? Like, what can they do right now?
So my answer is yes and yes. So yes, what we're going to talk about as well that I've been working on will help people with that. But the answer as far as what I would recommend people do if they want to get interviewed, I mean, outside of some things we've mentioned, like start a podcast and do it once a month. Like just commit to once a month, 15 minutes a month, and you'll have a reason to reach out to other podcasters. So that would be an easy shortcut that wouldn't take you a lot of time. There's stuff like that you can do. Another thing, a really big thing is if you're pitching podcasters, listen to one episode. Now, I'm not going to say listen to 100 hours of a podcast to pitch them, but listen to an episode that the topic relates to you. And then here's what you want to do when you pitch them. Explain why. You can either elaborate on that or actually explain why it wasn't true. So you can be a contrarian or you can be an add-on, but a contrarian, you might say, well, I love what Jay said about this. However, in my experience, and I'd love to come on the show and talk with that. So that's one thing. Know that podcasters care about how you're going to help their show grow. So rate and review the show. Subscribe to the show, and then send them a screenshot and say, I love this episode, and here's why, and this is what I said about it. Another thing, if you have any kind of list at all, tell the podcaster, I'm going to promote you to my list. Because all these things tell the podcaster you're going to bring listeners to them. And so I would say make it about how you can help their podcast. Make it about what you can deliver to their listener, because they care more about that than they do about getting your great idea out to the world. And that's for all media, really. And then I would say also leverage what you can to your disposal. So as an example, here's a great example. Go down the list of the guests they've had on. What if you know 3 of those guests? Then go, like, let's say, I'm just randomly picking a guest, but let's say you knew Bob Berg, and Bob Berg was on the show. You might go to Bob and say, hey, Bob, you're on the show. What do you think of the show? Do you like it? I'm thinking of reaching out. Bob might say, you know what, Corey? Don't worry about it. I'm going to connect you with them.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah. And that's, you guys, if you think about podcasters, they're looking for good interviews. And so if they've had a good experience with someone, they're going to want more of that person's friends because they're going to trust it's good. That's a great idea. So let's shift. What do you have going on? Because I think we're about to run out of time. What's happening that you can help my people with? I'm super excited for them to hear about this.
I wanted to. This is me. I want to add one more tiny little add to that. What people can do. So I just want to.
No more ads.
Yeah,
no more value.
It popped in my head. But another thing you can do is when you're on a podcast, actually ask the host afterward or via email. Usually they'll take time afterward to talk to you. Say, is there anything I can help you with? Is there anything way I can support you? Do you want me to find a guest for you, et cetera, et cetera? And then do that first and don't expect anything in return. But after you've delivered a little bit of value, there's nothing wrong with you going and saying, Jase, I'm just wondering, do you know other podcasters where I might be a good fit in their show? So that's another way you can get on other shows because podcasters know other podcasters. But what I'm also adding there is don't ask first. Don't say, hey, I really enjoyed that interview that you spent the time with me on and gave me the spot on your show. And do you know 20 podcasts that could also put me on the show? So I don't nothing to do it like that, but I'm saying give a little value first. But I will tell you, Mark Victor Hansen, really good at this. After our interview, said, and I already knew him quite well, but he said, Corey, do you know other podcasters that we'd be a good fit for? Now, Mark has earned the right to kind of say, hey, is there other shows? No joke, I put Mark in front of about 20 shows. One of the shows, 3.2 million listeners. And so it didn't hurt him to ask. And so now he got, just from me, and by the way, he does that. I asked him, do you do that for every podcast? He goes, yeah. So think of how many people. Now, it's a little bit of an easier pitch when I can send an email to one of my podcast hosts and say, hey, do you want Mark Victor Hansen on the show? Yeah. Like some of them, I don't even have to put a body in there into the email because if they haven't had him on and their podcast has been running a while, they're like, this is somebody I know is going to deliver and knock it out of the park. And he also brings on Crystal, his wife, who knocks it out of the park too. They do their podcast together a lot because they have a book out called Ask that they co-wrote together. So they're kind of a team that is crushing it right now. So I just want to add that tip about podcasts. So what I'm doing now and how it can help people get these interviews and get spots on shows and more than that, like even not to the level that you're working at, but some speaking opportunities we share as well. Writing, we have book publishers that are looking for authors. So basically what I put together is a membership site on steroids. So I essentially, about 5 years ago, knew I wanted to help more people get more platforms. And I wasn't ready to do it yet, but I knew I wanted to do that. Then I launched a few programs to help people do that. But those are all, high ticket things. And I'm like, how can I do something else to help people move to the next level earlier, sooner, with less investment? And so about a year ago, we started building a back end to a membership site. About 6 weeks ago, we launched it with a test group. Now this month, June, we're launching it officially. But the membership site, the whole idea is to help people become influencers today instead of tomorrow. So, and when I say influencers, I mean speakers, authors, podcasters, healers, entrepreneurs. And so what it looks like, though, is we built this thing that's almost like Netflix, the Netflix of personal development or Netflix of influence. So we have 5 kind of pieces of this. One is the back end site. And that's where it's like Netflix, where you can go into the category podcasting, speaking, writing. In speaking, for instance, since we're talking to a lot of people that are speakers, in speaking, we have people like Michael Port and Lisa Nichols revealing their secret sauces. And so you can go in, and these are the classic interviews that I've already done. Then we have Vault Originals, which are things like we have Jesse Ecker coming up, which would be T. Harv Ecker's son, who owns the Harv Ecker brand now. And he's revealing how to launch an online business. So that's inside the vault. But then the other 3 components, which are huge, is we have a monthly training where we bring on people to talk about how to crush it on LinkedIn, how to crush it with your best-selling book. And so Kelly, our mutual friend, Filardo, will be coming on to talk about how to crush it with a best-selling book. I have Shay Rowbottom coming on to talk about LinkedIn. Shay, for those that don't know, 700,000 followers on LinkedIn as a non-celebrity in less than a year and a half. So she knows a thing or two about how to crush it on LinkedIn. So we're bringing people like this, and you get to pick their brains and sit with them for an hour. Then I left the 2 biggest for last. We also bring on weekly influencers that you can ask questions in real time for 1 hour. Today's JJ Virgin. So literally my next thing in 10 minutes is JJ Virgin. Next week is Les Brown. Week after that is Bob Proctor. Week after that is John Gray. So as a member,
that's
you
get amazing lineup. And you get to talk to them?
Yeah, they're all live, and it's a Facebook Live, but basically just like we're doing here, I'll put their questions on the screen. They get to ask questions, so you can prepare and practice. I have a question for Bob Proctor that you can ask in real time, and that's what the members get. And the only other thing I'll add to is that the thing that's probably been the most popular, which I didn't see coming, Jase, which is the list. People are just calling it the list, but what we do is we build a curated list of opportunities. So people come to me and say, can I share the bill with Jack Canfield? Or sorry, do you want to share the bill with Jack Canfield, Corey? And I'll say, yes. And how many spots do you have for speakers? And so then we add that into our list. So right now we have about 85 opportunities in 6 weeks, where these are TEDx stages looking for speakers. These are speaking events looking for paid or non-paid. These are magazines looking for contributors, publishers looking for authors, and then, of course, podcasters and radio shows looking for speakers. 3 of those opportunities inside there now. One is a show you could be on in front of 3.2 million people, the one I mentioned. One is an Amazon live show. And one that's hidden is a guy who hires the speakers from Microsoft. So these are 3 of the 85 opportunities. And inside the vault, basically every month, we just add to that list. We're about to add more actually tomorrow. So
that's amazing.
That whole thing I just told you about, that part, to me, we've been working towards to be amazing for a long time, Jase. But the part that blows most people's mind is the price, because that's the part that is kind of a knock your socks off. It's basically, if you're in the US, it's around $35 a month. And I say around because if you're in Canada, it's $44. We realize psychologically it's better to put the pricing in Canadian, because then Canadians are paying exactly as they see, and in the US, you're paying less than you see. Whereas if you do the opposite, then you're paying, in Canada, you're paying more. And in the US, you're paying the same amount. So it's weird. It seemed easier to do it that way. But it's 44 Canadian or $444 a year. And basically, you get access to all those things I just mentioned to you. So sitting in front of Bob Proctor, being able to apply to speak at Microsoft. And again, this is something I didn't think I'd ever be able to build, especially for that price. And to finish this all off, I should add, if somebody said, why should I join now? What I'll say is that, first of all, you either get to be in front of Bob and Les, or you get to be on the replay. So if you come in now, you get to be in the live. Otherwise, I'll probably never bring them back in again, because I don't want to use too many asks with them. Second thing is, the price will never change if you're in now. Third is that what we're doing is we're giving away a speakerpreneurship, authorpreneurship masterclass. It's just 5 weeks, 1 week of me talking about high-level speaking stuff. Week 2, I brought on Tom Ziglar to talk about what he learned from his father Zig. Week 3 is writing. Week 4, I brought on James Redfield, who you mentioned, to share his strategy for selling 30 million books. And then Kelly Flardo came on and knocked it out of the park with the 5th week. This has already been pre-recorded, but I sold it at the time live for $450. And anybody that joins in June gets that for free, that whole masterclass.
Oh, awesome. Corey,
that's it.
When we were chatting about this before, I had no idea so much was in this. So not only is there training, there's access to shows, access to top people. There's a lot of access in this, like a lot of access. That's pretty incredible.
Yeah, it's like I say, it's been a long time in the making. Like, I could say 2 years since I sat down with my high performance coach and we put this together in a bristle board, and it looks almost the same. So it's been 2 years in the making, at least since then. But the whole big thing was, how can I offer this for less than $50 a month? That was my whole goal. And I will tell you, you probably know this from being in the business for so long. I had to use a lot of asks and favors, especially to bring the names in we have. And it keeps going. Like, right till the end of the year, we have every week we have a different influencer, and it's all over the map. Like, we have a guy named Demo Casanova coming in, who's a Grammy-winning producer who used to be married to Nelly Furtado, the pop star. And he's like as high level as it comes in terms of the knowledge he has. And so we got people like Demo coming in, Woody Woodrow, who's like in the 3rd largest independent band in the world, but also teaches yoga and meditation to the people that come to their event, even though they're a band that's as loud as Korn. So picture like Korn rolling a yoga carpet. So just like wild people that are doing amazing things. But also they're doing, like Woody has launched 2 #1 best-selling books. So it's not like I'm bringing them on just to talk about playing in a band. He's going to be going, how do you use self-care, and also how do you launch books? So yeah. I'm as excited probably as the people that are joining.
That is so cool. Congratulations, man. I can hear your passion in this. It's so awesome. So I think we're about at our time. Any final thoughts? And I put the link up. You guys watching, I put the link in the chat and in the description of the show. So get in there right now. And it's 44 Canadian. I was wondering why it was 44 Canadian. That makes sense. It's about 35 US. So any final thoughts for everybody?
Yeah. I guess what I would leave people with is, I feel everything starts with a single step. So when people look at as you said, this bio and that, they think, oh, I wish I could have done all that. But it all started with a single step. And so I would just leave people with this quote that is one of my favorite quotes. I think it's attributed to Zig Ziglar, but I'm just going to say this for now, but I'm pretty sure it is, because Tom said it was. So, but the quote is along the lines of, you don't have to be great to get started, but you do have to start to become great. And so what I would say to people is, if you're on the fence, nothing starts until you start. And, if you're people in the book world, this quote I heard not that long ago, which I love, and I'm paraphrasing again, but it's along the lines of, my crappy to decent book that people are buying is better than your brilliant book that you never write.
Mm. I
So
love that.
point of both of those quotes is nothing starts until you take action.
Cool.
So I would
That's
just say,
awesome.
take action, whatever that means
That
to
is
you.
so cool. I love it, man. Thank you so much. By the way, I want to give a shout out. One of our viewers, the one who's commenting, I had a feeling who it was, and I checked, and it was our friend Loretta. Loretta, thanks for tuning in and doing all the chatting. I appreciate it. And for those of you watching the replay, how long is this deal going to be good? The $44?
The $44 for sure, like, so I can say 100% for sure. I'm looking at the calendar here, June 26th. And so it's been a little bit, like it's a week and a half a bit, I would say. Reason is because I'm doing that masterclass on the 22nd, and then we're officially saying then the cutoff is 4 days after that. So people have like a week. I mean, I would say, what I would say though, if you want to enjoy Les Brown, then the cutoff is probably this weekend.
Guys, to get access to Les Brown is so valuable. So, hey, some people said so many gold nuggets. Thank you for sharing. And whoosh. We send whooshes, heart whooshes in our community. So, Corey, here's a big whoosh. Whoosh from me to you. Thank you for sharing. Oh, this is, guys, I wish I had this when I started too. Corey, you rock. Thanks so much, my man.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate you. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye. Bye, Facebook friends.